Good day, everybody. I hope that you are well, and I also hope that you are having a good day so far. Today, we'll be doing our grade 2 English lesson on subject and predicate. And before we start, we're going to log on to aplusstudents.ca. Once you've logged on to aplusstudents.ca with our username as well as our password, and then we're going to select the subject of English Language Arts, grade 2. And then we're going to scroll down up until we get to the chapter of subject and predicate. All right. So our chapter is subject and predicate. Our subject is English Language Arts. Grade 2. And in the lesson that we are going to be focusing on under the chapter of subject and predicate is to identify the subject of a sentence and to identify the predicate of a sentence. All right. So when it comes to subject and a predicate, right? So in every sentence has a subject and every sentence has a predicate. So a subject within a subject tells us who or what is doing something. That is a subject. It tells us who is doing something or what is doing something, right? And a subject can either be one word or a subject can be more than one word. All right. So if we look at examples of subjects, right, that tells us either who is doing something or what is doing something. Like we said, it can either be one word or it can be more than one word. All right. So for example, we says she sleeps a lot. So she sleeps a lot. And we said we have to identify the subject, right? That either tells us who is doing something or what is doing something. If we say she's sleeping a lot, she sleeps a lot. Now we need to ask ourselves who sleeps a lot or what sleeps a lot. So we would say it is she. So meaning she is our subject. The next sentence is her friend sleeps a lot. And remember, we said that our subject can either be one word or it can be more than one word, right? It tells us who or what is doing something. So we can say she sleeps a lot, or we can say her friend sleeps a lot. So if that's going to be the case, we will say who sleeps a lot? Her friend. So that is two words. Her friend sleeps a lot. But still, her friend is our subject that tells us who sleeps a lot. If we look at the next one, it says her best friend sleeps a lot, right? So if we were to identify who sleeps a lot, then we can say her best friend. So literally all three of those words is our subject that tells us who is doing something, which is her best friend that sleeps a lot. So when it comes to all three of these sentences, right, which is she sleeps a lot, her friend sleeps a lot, her best friend sleeps a lot. So our subjects within that sentence is either she, the second one is her friend, and the third one is her best friend. That's the three subjects within the sentence that tells us either who is doing something or what is doing something, right? So each of those sentences, right, or each one of the subjects, it tells us who sleeps a lot. It's either she, it's the friend, or it's the best friend. All right. So then we have a predicate, right? And the predicate within a sentence, it tells us what the subject is doing. So it's either what the person, what the thing, or what the animal is doing. It's almost like the action, it is the verb. All right, so which means that our predicate we said is the verb plus any other words that tells us more about it, which means that our verb or our predicate, it can either be one word or our predicate can be more than one word. All right, so if we were to identify the predicate within that sentence, right, which tells us what the subject is doing, and we say the predicate is a verb plus any other words that tells us more about the subject, can either be one word or more than one word. All right, so we can say her friend sleeps. So now we need to ask ourselves, what is her friend doing? Right? So if we were to say what her friend is doing, then we can say her friend sleeps. So sleeps is our predicate, or like we would say, is the verb, right? So sleeps is either the predicate, like we would say, or we would say it is the verb. So what is the friend doing? Because the friend is the subject, we say sleeps. If we look at the next sentence, it says her friend sleeps a lot. So her friend sleeps a lot. So now we need to ask ourselves, what is her friend doing? So we can say her friend sleeps a lot, right? So her friend is the subject, but the predicate that tells us what her friend is doing, then we say sleeps a lot. All right, so the next one says her friend sleeps a lot on the weekend. So her friend sleeps a lot on the weekend, right? So we need to now say what the predicate is, or let's say what the verb is. And we say the predicate, it tells us what the subject is doing. And within the sentence, the subject is her friend, right? So we need to say what her friend is doing. And we can say her friend sleeps a lot on the weekend, because that is the predicate, right? Which is the verb. And we said that the predicate can be the verb, right? Plus any other words that tells us more about it. So sleeps is a verb, and any other words, sleeps plus any other words, right? So which means that when we look at those three sentences, right, which is her friend sleeps a lot, or her friend sleeps a lot on the weekends, right, then we can say that each predicate, right, it tells us what her friend does. And her friend, right? Her friend, we can say, is the subject. So the predicate tells us what the subject is doing, and the subject is her friend, right? So if you were to basically say, or if you were to say what you are currently doing, right? If you were to say what you're currently doing, let's say, for example, you can say, I, oh, yeah, no, sorry. I dance at I dance at the, well, let's say we dance, not I, let's say we. You can maybe say we dance at the park, right? Which means that if we were to identify the subject within that sentence, then we can say we is the subject, and the subject we, it tells us what the person is doing, like who is doing something. And then dance, right, is our verb. But if we were to identify the predicate, then we can say dance at the park is our predicate. So it's the verb plus all the other words within that sentence. That is our predicate. All right. So once again, before we go on to aplusstudents.ca, right, our chapter subject and predicate, right, we see that with every sentence it has a subject and it has a predicate. Remember, a sentence starts with a capital letter and it ends with a end mark, right? But each sentence or every sentence has a subject and it has a predicate. And we said a subject, it tells us who is doing something or it tells us what is doing something, right? And we said a subject can either be one word or a subject can be more than one word. And then we said we have a predicate, right? Because a sentence also need to have a predicate. So the predicate tells us what the subject is doing. And that is the verb plus any other words that tells us more about it. All right. And once again, a predicate can either be one word or a predicate can be more than one word. Yeah, so if you were to say my family plays soccer, then my family is the subject, right? My family is the subject because it basically shows or tells us who is doing something, and plays soccer is the predicate within that sentence. So well done. All right, so now let's go to aplusstudents.ca, and we said our chapter is subject and predicate. And the lesson that we're going to be doing first is to identify the subject of a sentence. Okay, you don't get, must I explain again what a subject and a predicate is? Should I explain again what a subject and a predicate is? All right. Okay. So let me explain again. Right. So I'm gonna explain again. Um. Okay. No problem. Okay. So now we have, so within a sentence, right? You have a subject and you have a predicate. So whether you say that, um. So even if we just say that for example, B Funk's um, talks, right? So whether we just say these two words, right? So whether we are just saying that B Funk talks, right? Then it means that this is a sentence on its own. Then it means that B Funk is our subject because it tells us what he is doing, right? And talks is our predicate and it tells us what B Funk is doing, right? So if we were to say that B Funk talks a lot, right? So if we would say B Funks talks a lot, then B Funks is still our subject, right? The subject either tells us who is doing something or what is doing something, right? That is the subject. So B Funk is our subject. But now, if we were to identify the predicate, it tells us what B Funk is doing. B Funk is the subject, right? So then our predicate is not just talks, which is the verb, but now we say talks a lot because now it is the verb plus any other words that comes after the verbs, right? So within a sentence, we have a subject and we have a predicate. So if we look at, for example, let's look at the sentences, right? We look at these sentences. It says she sleeps a lot, right? So she is our subject, right? I'm going to put S for subject. And then sleeps, right? This is our verb, but our predicate, right, that tells us what she does is then sleeps a lot. So she is the subject, but sleeps a lot is our predicate, right? Then, if we look at the next sentence, it says her friend sleeps a lot. So, if we were to identify what our subject is, it says the subject tells us who or what is doing something, can either be one word or more than one word. So, who is doing something here? Her friend is doing something. So, that is the subject, right? So, which means that it is two words now. And what is her friend doing, which is the predicate, is sleeps a lot, is our predicate, right? And that is why we say within a sentence we have a subject and we have a predicate. All right. Do we understand now, or do I still need to, or do I need to still explain again? All right. So I'm glad you're getting it now, right? Guys, don't be shy to let me know that you don't understand. I will gladly explain again, right? All right, so now we're going to identify the subject of a sentence, right? And remember, we say that the subject in a sentence, it tells us who is doing something or what is doing something, right? Our subject can either be one word or our subject can be more than one word, right? And we made an example of either she sleeps a lot, she is our subject. Her friend sleeps a lot, her friend is our subject. Her best friend sleeps a lot, so her best friend is our subject. All right. So let's look at our activity before we go to our test, right? It says select one word that makes up the subject. It says, Mom listened to the radio. Mom listened to the radio. What is our subject within this sentence? What is our subject within the sentence? Only one word. All right, so we need to identify the subject. All right, so if we were to identify the subject, we would say it is mom. All right, mom is our subject that tells us who basically tells us what is doing something. So mom, what is mom doing? Listens to the radio. So mom is our subject, right? All right, look at this next sentence, right? It says we need to identify two words that make up the subject, two words, right? It says, my uncle lives next door. So, my uncle lives next door. So, we need to identify the subject. We need to say who is doing something or what is doing something. Two words. All right. So if we were to identify our subject, then we would say it is my uncle. That is our two words, right? That is our subject, which is my uncle. All right, so now let's go to our test, right? Where we are going to identify the subject within that sentence. All right, we're going to select two words within that sentence that makes up the subject. It says, those boys missed the game. Those boys missed the game. We need to select the two words that make up a subject. Is it those boys, option one, pardon, or the game? We need to select the subject. Is it option one, those boys, or option two, the game? Our subject. All right, and if we were to identify our subject within that sentence, then yes, it would be those boys, right? And those boys are correct. So well done. Option one is correct. All right, let's look at the next one. It says select two words that make up the subject. It says Frank's aunt sang the song. Frank's aunt sang the song. Is it the song or is it Frank's aunt? What is our our subject? Is it option one, the song, or is it option two, Frank's aunt? So option one or option two, which is our subject, tells us who sang the song. All right, so if we were to select the two words, then we would say Frank's aunt, which is option two. All right, it says babies cry at night. We need to select the one word that make up our subject. Babies cry at night. Is it option one, which is babies, or option two, which is cry? Who cries at night? Is it babies or is it cry that is our subject? All right, and if we were to identify our subject within the sentence, then yes, we would say it is babies, right? Because what are babies doing? They cry at night. So well done. Okay, let's do the last one and then we're going to our predicate. We need to select the one word that makes up the subject. It says Sparky pulled the rope. Sparky pulled the rope. We need to select the subject. Is it Sparky or is it rope? All right, and if we were to identify our subject within that sentence, we would say it is Sparky. All right, so now let's go on to our predicate, right? And it says we're going to identify the predicate. Remember, we said that the predicate is either just the verb or it is the verb plus any other words that follows, right? That tells us more about the subject. So the predicate, it tells us what the subject is doing. And we said the predicate is the verb plus any other words that tells us more about the subject, right? It can either be one word or it can be more than one word. All right. So look at this word. It's the sentence. It says we need to select three words that make up our predicate. It says turtles live in water. Turtles live in water. What is our predicate within the sentence? Is it turtles or live in water? And we can then say lives in water. That is our three words that make up our predicate, right? Lives in water because it tells us who lives in water, right? Or let's say basically, yeah, lives in water. All right, let's look at the next one. It says we ran to school. So we need to select three words that make up our predicate. And our three words can be ran to school because ran is our verb plus all the other words after our verb that tells us what we did. So ran to school. All right, so let us go to our test, right? Where we are going to identify the predicate of a sentence. It says, the woman named her baby. So the woman named her baby, right? We need to select three words that make up our predicate. So our predicate, is it the woman, option one, or is it option two, named her baby? Remember, it is the verb plus any other words after, not the subject, the predicate, which is the verb plus all the other words that follows. We need to select three words. All right, so we can then say named her baby. Beautiful. Option two is correct, right? Because named is our verb plus any other words afterwards that tells us about the woman, right? So named her baby is the predicate. So well done. Option two is correct. All right, select three words that make up the predicate. It says your friend lost her lunch. Your friend lost her lunch. What are the three words that make up our predicate? Is it option one, your friend lost, or is it option two, lost her lunch? Look at the verb first, right? So look at the verb first, then all the other words that comes after the verb. Remember, look at the verb, right? What is the verb within that sentence? And then first look at the verb, the action. Mm-mm. You were correct. Is it Ioma? Ioma. You were correct. Option two is correct. Right? Because remember our verb first. Lost is our verb. Right? Plus any other words after. So lost tells us about the subject. Right? So lost her lunch is correct. Right? Yes, option two is correct. All right, let's try again. We need to select three words, right, that make up our predicate. Three words. It says, our cat comes to me. What is the cat doing? That is the question that you ask yourself. What is the cat doing? Do we say option one, comes to me, or option two, our cat comes? What is the cat doing? We need to choose three words. Do we say comes to me, which is our verb plus any other words, or do we say our cat comes? First, identify the verb then all the other words after the verb that tells us about our cat. Our cat is our subject. All right, then if we were to choose the correct option, we would go with option one, right? Because option one tells us about our cat. It tells us what the cat is doing. It comes to me, right? So option one is correct. Well done. We need to select two words that make up our predicate. Two words. It says, your family walked outside. Your family walked outside. So what we need to say what your family is doing. Do we say your family walked, or do we say your family walked outside? Option 1 or option 2. Do not use family again. Your family is our subject. Your family is our subject. Now you need to tell me what are they doing? What are the two words that is not highlighted? All right. So yes, if we were to choose two words that make up our predicate, then we would say walked outside, because walked is our verb and outside is the other word after our verb that tells us about your family, right? So option 2 is correct. So well done. All right. So this is now the end of our lesson on subject and predicate, right? We say that within every sentence we need to have a subject and we need to have a predicate, right? The subject tells us who or what is doing something, right? It can either be one word or it can be more than one word. And then we have a predicate, right? And the predicate tells us, it basically tells us the action that the subject is doing. So our predicate can be the verb plus any other words that comes after the verb that tells us more about the subject, right? Can be one word or it can be more than one word. That is both for subject as well as predicate. All right. So do we all understand what a predicate is? Do we have a better understanding of what a subject and a predicate is now that we're about to end our lesson? All right. So this is the end of our lesson. Thank you very much, grade twos, for joining the class. I really hope that you are going to have a good evening further. Right. So till next time. Goodbye.